This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we are live on our Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube channels with Sawami from Los Angeles and Tokyo. And we're this is the first time that we're interviewing her, and I think it's actually her first podcast interview, right?
Yes, I'm nervous.
Oh, don't be nervous. We're all friends here. Um,
Great.
so, just to get it out of the way, because we do have to do a little business at the beginning, is that we have a couple of sponsors. One of them is newsly.me, and they are an iOS Android app that reads the news back to you in a natural way. So if you use Ghost 2021 as the coupon code, you get 1 month free premium subscription. It's Newsly. It's an iOS Android app, and it reads the news to you, so you don't have to actually read it. It does it in an audio format, so it's kind of cool. You want to check that out. And then the other brand that actually is supporting us a lot, big time for our festival that's coming up on the 11th, is Double Jack Online out of Germany, and they are a philanthropic online lottery where you can play Keno and Powerball. And you just take your cell phone and scan that, and then you can actually play Keno and Powerball online outside the U.S. on a VPN in the U.S. And you can become an influencer for them and earn side income. So it's kind of a cool thing if you're a musician, you're trying to find a way to get money. Um, so that's another thing that we do. And now we're going to actually put up the link to Sawami Music so people can get to that. Hold on a second, I'll get that right now.
Yay.
And yeah, we encourage everybody to go out to the links that we put on the podcast. We'll be putting out her Spotify links and her main website link on this podcast. And we're just, thank you for being on the show again. We're just going to put our banner back up so everybody knows it's the ghost. And yeah, one of the things we do like to do is we're going to queue up a music video that you have for your song, Falling Down. And what we found is if we actually introduce at the beginning a piece of music or video before we go to the full interview, then the fans can kind of get a good reference point as to what you're all about. So if that's cool, we're going to play your full video for Falling Down, and then we'll come back and do the full interview. And then I'll put you on mute, and then we'll come back. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
When I look into your clear eyes, the desire inside of me is washed away. You took my heart, I had no desire.
So that was falling down, and now we'll make sure I end this. So there we go. I think we're back. So you can hear me, right?
Yes, yes,
And,
I
you're,
can
and,
hear
and
you.
I got
Yes.
you back right. So this is always
Mhm.
the hard part, but I got you back.
I see.
Um,
Yes.
so when we start the interview, we always like to talk to artists and ask them like, well, how did you get into music? Like, at what age did you decide
Mm.
that you wanted to be a musician?
So that's interesting. So you already introduced me, but I'm from Japan and born and raised in Tokyo. So and then I moved to LA 2009. So when I was 7, I started singing. I started singing, and I joined the NHK Tokyo Broadcasting Children's Chorus Group for 10 years. And I performed opera and classical concert, and also I did the education music TV for kid, and I also toured Europe, and it was beautiful opportunity to sing in at the Notre Dame in Paris. That's how
Wow.
I started singing. Yeah, so I
So
kind of started with the classical. Yeah.
So did you go to like a musical school for like the actual like a private school to get to that level, or were you just naturally talented?
Oh, so when I was 7, I just jumped to join it, like to the course group. So before that, I never have any um uh practice or train. But I
Okay, you just
remember, yeah, I remember the kindergarten teacher that told me that I have a good voice. So
so
that's how I kind
they
of
picked up on it that you had like that a natural capability, and then you got into it.
yeah, yeah.
So you started with it's interesting because you have this kind of like symphonic sound, and I actually had just talked to an artist out of Germany that
Mm.
described that potentially as like electronic symphonic, and you have like this symphonic electronic type of sound to your music. It's really interesting, and I like
Oh,
the fact
thank
that
you.
you're playing pianos as a keyboardist. You know, in today's world where there's so many people are just on DAWs, and not that that's not cool, but there's a lot of people in music that are producers. They're not actual
Mm.
trained from the classical point of view or actually play piano, and it's really cool to see you actually taking a piano and taking the orchestration. And then the
Oh,
question I
thank
had
you. Yeah.
in your video where you have three three people in the room, is that all you? Is that all
That's
you?
me. That's me.
And I looked at your hair. Your hairdo is like each one of those women had the same hairdo. So it's like, so you're playing bass and guitar and keyboard, or is that
Oh,
just in the?
actually, this recording, my partner David records, and then
Mm-hmm.
but I thought it was a cool idea for my music video, so I want to
Yeah,
like
yeah.
sing and also do the guitar and bass. So I practiced, and I kind of a little bit that play the guitar as well. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I kind of like doing it,
Well, I think as
and
a singer songwriter, it's cool to be on as many instruments as possible, even if you're not like the
yes.
best at an instrument. It's like
Mhm.
even when you're doing your demos, just to be able to
Exactly. Yeah.
explain, or even if you're not the best player, it's
Mhm.
cool to actually see somebody, you know, write their song because that's your vision, right? And then somebody
Right.
else that might be a better bass player could take your bass line and play it better. But that's the kind of nature of being you go to in a band because like I'm a keyboard player, so I might write the bass part, but a real bass player or somebody like a professional bass player is going to take what I did on my keyboard and maybe do a better job of it.
Right,
Um,
and it's cool that you just said it that because so because of the pandemic, so actually I was stuck in Japan. That I
oh
couldn't
wow.
go back to United States. So
Hmm.
then at the time I just went to Hawaii for the
Oh wow.
vacation, and then completely stuck in there. So I wind up go back to Japan, not LA. So but think about it. I just went to the Hawaii for the just
Vac-
sightseeing. So
Vacation.
I don't have nothing. I
You
don't
didn't
have
have anything
nothing.
with you.
No, I only have like a aloha shirts and dress or something. I went back to Japan, so I don't have nothing. So then I wind up, okay, so I don't have nothing. So why don't you just start practicing guitar? So that's
Well,
how I kind of started to play a little bit of guitar, And then now I'm not super good at it, but I started appreciating guitarist. And
Well,
then
it's
that's
cool.
a,
I think that's
yeah.
cool because I think like actually I started off as a wind player. I play clarinets and saxophones and
Mm,
flutes. But then I found it's like, well, it's hard to actually write a song
mhm.
on a wind. Not that you can't, but you just end up writing a wind part. You write a flute part, you write a sax part,
Right, right.
but you can't write the chords because those instruments don't really have chords. And
Hmm.
so like I'm like, okay, I got it. I gotta learn piano if I want to be a songwriter. So so or guitar. And so those are the two like songwriting instruments is the piano and the guitar because both of them you can pretty much do the basic things you need to do as a
Hmm.
songwriter.
Right.
Um, so when did you realize you had a talent for music and you start writing your own music, like your own material? Because there's a difference between being a classical musician. I've actually interviewed a lot of them, and they're totally like just trained to do Bach and Beethoven, Chopin. That's what they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't really write a lot of times their own stuff. They interpret the classics, and that's what they do their whole career. Um, what made you want to go and write your own music and have your own material?
That's very interesting questions. So, because I have a little bit of a unique background in my career, because as
Mm,
I said, I started kind of classical piece of music, I singing opera, and then also I started to feel I want to express myself, not just the singing. So I wind up went to the performing arts college for musical. So I
okay.
performed several musicals, and then and then now also I also did it how do I say? I also organized my own concert, and I used several songs from the musicals, and then it guide to the next level. I want to create music, so
Mhm,
I kind of created music and singing in a concert. But at the time, actually, it was in Japan, and at the time, I just wrote the vocal melody only, and then
mhm,
I asked others to write the chord progressions. And
mhm,
then the 2009, I moved to LA to seek an opportunity to find my voice or music. And then I did several shows, like musical shows in here, and I joined the rock bands, and it was fun. And then so I did it as a backup singer and keyboardist. And
oh, cool.
then I started to super interested practice piano seriously.
Mhm,
And at the time, I met David, my partner David, and he taught me the several classical pieces of music. And
mhm,
while I'm practicing piano, I started to goofing around. So I
mhm.
play around the chords, and then suddenly I saw a vision of a girl like falling down from the sky very beautifully and gracefully. And that's how the song Falling Down come out.
Well, because
And
you have synesthesia as is in your
yes, I want to talk about that. Oh, you
it's
know
interesting.
it.
It's interesting because synesthesia is
Yes.
something I've actually used in my music. Like I
Oh, so you
actually
have it.
well, I don't know if I have it. Like I've been a musician since I was 17. I'm 54, but
Mhm,
like I tend to see color. I tend to look at music because George Martin and Jimi Hendrix talked about the idea of sound paintings.
mhm.
And so when George
Yeah.
Martin was interviewed about the Beatles, he said, I like to do musical composition like Monet. I like to think
Mm,
of music as a sound painting. And that's how he
yes.
described how
Yes.
he was able to get the Beatles into Sergeant Pepper, right? Rubber Soul and Sergeant Pepper, because he started to use the studio as an instrument. And then in
Mhm,
the studio, you could use tape loops, you could use all kinds of synthesizers and keyboards, and you could layer things in the pattern like what he tried to describe with the sound painting, like an idea that you could layer like a painter, that you
mhm,
could take sound and you don't have to actually replicate what you would do live. You could do things that you could never do live, right? And
mhm,
that's what Sergeant Pepper kind of represented was that you can build music and it doesn't necessarily have to be able to be performed, that you could actually build an album to sound like it's perfect or as strange as you want with all these layers and colors and stuff that you could almost visually see it.
yeah.
We got very interested in the idea of that because even Jimi Hendrix on Electric Ladyland, people asked him like, how come you sound like birds and water and stuff on here? He said, well, it's a sound painting. And Hendrix
Mhm.
said that himself. And so the idea of that, being a fan of the Beatles and Hendrix, I was like, wow, that's a cool idea to take that synesthesia idea. And I have tons of poetry and songs that actually name check synesthesia in my catalog because they kind of
Put my name too.
of the idea. The idea.
So
But I know
actually,
you have it.
actually, the Dave Grohl from Foo Fighters, he has a synesthesia as well.
Yeah, I heard
So
that.
I heard so the David, my partner David, reading in a book about him, and we just discovered, and yay, me too.
Well, I thought as a writer, I thought it was a really good concept, and I had it in a bunch of poetry. I started as a poet before I got into music, and then I was a musician, and I never realized I could mix the two.
Mhm.
So I actually I would go read poetry, and I never did the music with it. And then suddenly somebody said, "Why don't you mix the poetry you're doing with the music you're doing?" And I said, "Well, yeah, maybe I should do that."
Yeah, you should. Yeah, it's
So that's
great.
the idea. Like, so you realized you had an ability to write your own material, but like, who are your influences and your reference points in your music? Who would you say were your primary influences as a musician? Not that you're trying to copy them, but who inspires you, or who you're really, looked up to as a somebody who's a musician.
So I think I inspired by modern classic or musical or film score. I think probably because of my background.
Hmm.
And I love Joe Hisashi. He is my favorite composer. He's a
Hmm.
Studio Ghibli movies composer,
Oh yeah,
and
those movies are awesome.
amazing, amazing. So I love his little bit fragileness for the music. I love this. So yeah, so and that's kind of my influence, I guess. And so I really like to add story to my music. So in
Hmm.
a sense, I think I'm inspired by the song structure from musicals, and then
Hmm.
sometimes I'm inspired by story than just music.
So it's
Yeah.
like a rock opera idea because like I'm a progressive musician. So what that means is I like bands like Genesis and Pink Floyd,
Mm.
bands like Yes, because if you go back in the 70s, those bands used to do what we call rock operas. So when you would listen to an album, the whole album would have a theme. It'd be like
Yeah.
going into a movie, right?
Right.
So Pink Floyd albums are kind of famous for
Mhm.
having like they actually have been turned into movies because they have these thematic things. Like even the Who with like Tommy and Quadrophenia, they actually created the rock opera with Tommy. And the idea in progressive rock is that you actually, use the album format to tell stories or do these sound paintings or sound movies. And that's like I'm old school that way. I'm not like a modern EDM musician. I'm more of a like Genesis or Yes or Pink
Mm.
Floyd. That's my
Cool.
people
Yeah, yeah.
I'm inspired by because they tell stories.
Yeah.
And that's what I think music, like the album format in the 70s, what I love about the singer songwriters is that each song actually tells like a complete story. Like you
Mhm.
listen to the Carpenters, they're all these sad love stories,
Mhm.
and there's or James Taylor. There's just really, I seen fire, I seen rain. Those are classic type of song structures compared to like today you have songs that are mostly like clip based beats and loops
Mhm. Yeah.
that
Repeat,
aren't as
repeats. Yeah.
they're not as like the kind of structure that the Beatles had or Todd Rundgren or any of the classic artists that that I kind of look up to. But yeah, I mean, classical musicians definitely have structure because it's like that's the core structure of any kind of when you learn music. My woodwind when I did woodwinds, everything was I was playing was all classical stuff. So I
Mm.
kind of had that background too because I was playing in bands where they had wind sections, and
Yeah, it's cool.
flutes and the clarinets to like play these big pieces. And I understood how the song structures for those songs are, but that's different than like a pop song, you know. So
Yeah.
how did you transition from like classical to pop? Because the pop structure is more concise and it has more hook in it. What
Yeah.
did you actually like train yourself for that, or do something, or you just had a natural ability to kind of know how to build the hook?
I don't know. I never think about that.
You just do
Interesting.
it. You just do
Just I did.
it. Well, some
And
artists some writers they just you can do it. Like,
Yeah, I'm more, I way more focused on the not like hook. It's more like a story,
mhm,
and more focus on the dynamics to go
dynamics.
in something, because
Yeah,
I
it
just
falls
don't want to
down.
do repeating same thing over and over, because the emotion has to be changing. So this song "Falling Down" is kind of talk about the angel falling in love with human. So it's kind of
Kind of like
forbidden love.
kind of like Milton. You know, you got a little bit of Milton, Paradise Lost kind of theme
Yeah.
in
Yes.
there.
Like
Like
right.
a classical kind of mythology.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool. Thanks. Yeah.
you got that kind of Milton, Paradise Lost type of thing going on, but then you got you got that classical structure where you have things kind of build up and have a crescendo, decrescendo, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
That's that's really
And,
cool. You don't really hear that as much in what's in the top 10. It's more like like I said, in the 70s, you could hear bands doing what you're doing.
mm,
Like even in the 80s, you would hear bands, but new wave kind of took over and maybe different. I think like the 70s is really a period where you have a lot of bands playing like between jazz and classical. You got like jazz outfits like Miles Davis and a lot of the Herbie Hancock. They were all doing things that were very interesting. Very interesting pieces of work, and it was a merging of multiple genres, like bands
mm,
mixing the blues with rock and people taking classical, and in bands like a Steely Dan just taking everything. They're having people from
yeah.
all these studio musicians from all over the world working with them to build songs, and they
Yeah.
were just trying
Yeah.
to build songs that told stories. Like that's
Yeah.
what all those Steely Dan records. Every song is like a story. You know,
Yes. Yes.
and that's kind of where I think you are from what I hear in your
Oh,
music.
thank you. Yes. Yes. Thank you so
Which is
much.
cool, but I think it's coming back. I think people want. I heard this story. My daughter's like 22, and she said that more people in her generation are listening to 70s, 80s, 90s music than actually 2020 music. That
Oh.
people they are going back and they're listening to stuff that they said like 5 years ago they wouldn't listen to. They're actually going back and because they're realizing that some modern music doesn't have those elements,
Mm,
and they're kind of
yes.
reminiscing for the time when songwriters actually put the work in.
Yes. Yeah. 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 It's more organic, like soul. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I always kind of digress. But I understand that there's some really great music that's done in the modern forms. Like
Mhm.
there are great EDM, great DJs, great trap and trance.
Yes.
Not to put them down, so people don't yell at me for saying what I prefer. But I listen to everything, and I interview people from multiple genres. It's just I
Mhm.
have a preference that I kind of like the singer songwriter. Um, that's just kind of where I come from. But one of the other things I like to get into is how would you describe your writing style? Like, do you kind of plan out? Like you, I think you said that you kind of came to you with the synesthesia,
Mhm.
that song falling down. Is that how most of your songs kind of come to you?
Yes, it's interesting. So when I'm creating music, I always follow colors or visions. So start, I kind of play around, and then if I saw colors, and then I'll just following, and then
Mhm.
if I lost the same vision or same color, I keep changing until I continue to see the vision of the story. It's kind of the vision and the color guiding me, and that's kind of why I started to play around and finish the one song as a structure. And then so that's why usually I'm always start with music, not lyrics.
Mhm.
And then so then kind of started with piano, and then I after I finished the structure of the piano, sometimes I started to do the melody line or a little bit of orchestra to the arrangements to start, or
Mhm.
lyrics. It depends on the song, but always like piano, and then
Piano.
like find the colors or visions that I like. Yeah.
That's interesting because I mean I'm a synthesist. I started on piano, but then I got really heavy in the synthesizers, and I actually use like organic hardware synths and modular
Mm,
analog, synths, and even my digital synths are like Roland's and Yamaha physical synths. Just
mm,
because I found that when I create, music that it's the colors that you get on these old school synthesizers because
Mhm.
they have all these controls, kind of like a Hammond
Yeah.
organ in the drawbars. On these modular synthesizers or these analog synths, you have so many different controls to color the sound. And a
Mm.
lot of times, what I feel is I let my synthesizers talk to me. So
Mm.
I will turn them
Nice.
on, and they act different every day. And so it's like
Yes.
I'll let my mode kind of tell me what I should write because I'll turn it
Yeah.
on and play with it, and it'll give me something that I didn't expect. And I said, well, that is what I'm going to work on because
Yeah.
I'll go play with the LFO and I play with the oscillators and I play with the envelopes, and then suddenly it spits out something I didn't expect. And then I'm like, wow, I can actually work with that. I tend to work in a stream of consciousness style where I'll let the synthesizers talk to me, and then I'll kind of just open a mic and then just hit the record, and I'll just find what worked. Kind of like Frank Zappa. I was big time into like how Frank Zappa used to work, and he used to record everything he did. He would go record his live concerts. He records his experiments in the studio, and then he'd go back and listen to the tapes and say, "Okay, well, this goes with this, and this goes with that." And that's how he would put things together. And I said, well, that's a cool way of doing it. And
Mm.
I found that actually works for me because then I kind of, instead of trying to really be hard at working at something, I kind of just put things down and see what works.
Yeah, it's
That's
great.
just that's just a
Yeah.
different way. Everybody's had different ways of doing it, but
Mm.
I think
Yeah, the
that
sounds kind of talk to me, right? Like
yeah,
you
they
said,
talk to you
it's
too.
talking, communications. Yeah.
It's
It's
kind of
really
like
cool.
like poets would say that they got their poetry from the ether or they got it from the universe or the muse. There's
Hmm.
this idea in poetry that there's this universal muse and poets are tapped into it, right? So if you're like a Wordsworth or Blake or Tennyson, these great poets, right? You were like, oh, I kind of picked this out of this universal concept of poetry and I just tapped into it. And I think
Hmm.
musicians are like that too. You can kind of tap into this universal like notes. They're I just out
Yep.
there. And I think if you're a musician, you can
Yep.
hear and see and feel them, right?
Yes, feel it,
Things
and then
that
just
happen
pick
to you,
up.
right? Do you take things that happen to you as a songwriter and then you turn that into music, whether it's
Mm.
good or bad or whatever? You can take the emotion and then
Yep.
turn it into something, right? That's artistic.
Yes. That's cool. Yes.
Well, that's why I try to describe the process because people say, well, I think it's hard for people who aren't creative people to understand how a musician actually does what we do. Because they're like, how do you sit there and write something? Because if you're not a person that's a creator, right, and you never really get those ideas, you kind of people get mystified by musicians and artists. It's like, well, how did they get these ideas? And I think it's the type of like the synesthesia is a good example. Like for you, you're kind of naming your creative process with a
Yep.
term that people go, oh wow, I see how she can is mixing is like she can see things with the color of the music and the picture from the music, and that's kind of driving your experience. And
Yeah.
that makes it more easy to understand compared to you get talk to an artist and they say, well, I don't know. I just do
You're
it.
right.
They just do it. It's like, okay, why did they really tell me anything?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah.
go ahead. I mean, is there anything you want to add to that kind of
No,
process?
I think I believe it was gifted it. Then I love the way to creating my own music. I
Mhm.
love to be a little bit spiritual to talking and pick it up the sound of the colors or emotion. I kind of believe in the emotion also how it colors. So
Mhm.
like pick up, and I love the what you just described. It's really cool.
Yeah, I just think it's the poet. Like I grew up like in like my favorite Victorian poet is William Blake because what I like about William Blake and it kind of fits today's world. If you look at like Tiger, how fierce like symmetry. His poems are very short. They kind of work in the modern world compared to the other Victorian poets. They're very verbose. They're Tennyson and Wordsworth. They're very long. And it's complicated. But when you look at like Wordsworth, they kind of fit in a modern kind of song structure. They're very short. They're very to the point.
Mm.
And then I was like, well, that was really appealing to me because he was able to direct it. And then when I found out by his history, he used to actually etch his poems onto metal and do drawings and etching So every one of his poems is actually an actual etched metal painting with the poem
Yeah.
embedded into it. So it's a total kind of art experience. It's like he's using metallurgy and art and poetry all in one thing.
Wow.
So it's a real visual kind of sound painting because it's actually is a painting. It's a
Yeah. I love
metal
the word
painting.
sound painting. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So it's like wow. It's like so his work really gravitated to me in this kind of visual age. It's like that's what I think a lot of artists are trying to be like that. You know, they're
Mm,
trying to find a way to connect through multimedia. You know,
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and your
Okay.
video kind of shows that because your video is kind of like the way MTV used to have videos. It actually isn't just performing and isn't just the way a lot of videos are. You're telling a story. It's a visual cinematic
Yeah,
sound.
I love the other color.
Yeah,
I edit everything. I need to say.
you did. Yeah, you
I
did
did
that.
everything. And then
Yeah, that's awesome.
I need to tell you that one thing. I never ever use software
Hmm.
ever. So this is my first time I edit video.
Hmm.
And so when I'm releasing the Falling Down, uh I know that I want to make creating the music video, but how? I don't even know. Then I don't even know what kind of software. And then
Hmm.
there's a what is it? Final Cut Pro
Oh,
and
Final Cut Pro or something.
Premiere Pro. That's kind of I was when I Google it, it pop up and like
You know,
which
so
one?
you're trying to find a tool that'll make you
Yeah, that's how I start. And
what's in
then
your head.
I choose the Premiere Pro, and then so that I watched the linking video, and I'm from Japan, so the English is my second language, but the
Mhm.
linking video is just only English version
Yeah.
of it, and I
Oh, you
have
should have
to,
done the Japanese version of it.
so I was looking for the Japanese version, but there's nothing like more detail about the Premiere Pro. So like I need to watch the English version. So first I
Mhm.
have to understand and I have
Right.
to make notes and also exercise. Even if the teacher told me like just one thing for 5 minutes, it takes like a 1 hour to understand.
To figure it out, yeah, that's
Yeah,
hard.
but
That
like
yeah. Well, I think that's really cool that you did the work.
thank
'Cause
you.
well, I think it's really awesome. It's the reason why I like to talk to singer-songwriters because, like, in this industry, you can talk to people who are, like, producers, and then you have artists that work with writers, and they don't really write their own stuff, right? And I
Mhm.
tend to focus in the industry for emerging artists and artists in the indie world that write their own thing, right? They write their own music, that produce their own music, that have their own vision. Because
Yeah,
one thing I really dig that because I kind of grew up with like bands like like Bob Dylan and the band and the class like Hendrix. These are all people that wrote their own thing. They created their own thing. People. If you look at Bob Dylan, he's like a total contradiction because his voice would never he'd never get a contract today
Mhm.
with the voice he had, right? But the
Mhm.
lyrical content is so immense that he was able to kind of push through not having like a 5 octave voice, not having the perfect kind of voice. Cause he came out during a period like where the record companies were really focused on people's voices. You had Motown, you had all these big machines at RCA and everything. And the fact that he was able to get on Columbia with his voice
Yeah,
is unbelievable.
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because I think his voice is brilliant, but if you compare it to the Sinatras and the Motown people, like it's not that, and that's what the industry was saying you had to have to get in. And what I like about his story is like he kind of forced his way into the industry and became like an icon. And it kind of like the representation of like how you should write songs from a
Mm.
Dylan-esque point of view. People like look at that as like the standard for certain types of songwriting. And he really pushed it. And I think that's what I like about, I always tell people, it's like, you don't have to be what's the most popular thing. You have to believe in what you're doing,
Mm.
right? So you believe
Yes,
like, the reason you do what you do, right, is because you love it,
yes, I
because you
love it.
believe it, and you have a vision, and you want to have that vision shared, right?
Yes, yes. Thank you for saying that. Yes, exactly what you just said.
But that's what I think is really cool about the indie world, because I grew up like doing college radio, and I loved pushing bands that weren't really that big.
Mm,
As a college radio DJ, I was just pushing, at the time, bands like REM and bands like the Replacements, and the bands like early bands that were like where Nirvana came from on Sub Pop, like these really
mm,
small indie labels. And what happened like in the 80s and 90s is like bands like REM that were very small suddenly
mm.
blew up.
Yeah.
Bands like the Replacements, they're super small. They blew up. People started, even like the idea of Nirvana. They were on a super small indie label. They were never
Yeah.
really going to blow up. And then suddenly
Right.
people got that vision. It's like, wow, these guys are doing something in an age where you had like the Motley Crue and the hair bands. They came out with like punk again. And
Yeah.
they're like, wow, we really thought punk was done. Like with the Sex Pistols, it was over. And then Nirvana kind of brought it
Yeah.
back with grunge, like a different
Yeah.
feel. So that you can always, if you have a vision or Kurt never really wanted to make money. He wasn't about making money. He was about writing the song, and that's always the thing I tell when I'm producing people is like, it's a really like, is that song got honesty? Is it honest? Is it like the best thing you ever did? Is like, are you just trying to emulate other things? Are you just trying to do the best of what you can do? Or are you trying to like emulate someone else?
Yeah.
It's like you got to find your voice.
Yes. Yeah. 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 I'm so happy to came here to, look for. But that's why I came here to find my music, but also find my voice. So yeah.
So when you came to LA, what steps did you take to try to do that? What did you do when you tried to get your voice? Like, who did you seek out? What did you do?
Interesting. So yeah, first of all, I so it was almost 10 years ago or something. I couldn't speak English at all, zero.
Mm.
So I don't even know where to go. I don't know how to buy rice. So that's how I kind of start. And then so when I was fun interesting. So one of my friends who can speak English, he just emailed into the several people to renting apartments. And I said I don't have a driver's license, so please, like, your room is really close, just 5 minutes walking to the bus station. And say, yeah, 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 it's cool. Then it wind up like 40 minutes walking all the way top to the Hollywood Hills. That's my first. That was my first. The room that I got, and of course, next day I lost. And then Coyote was, crying, and I was so, it was so bad. But that's kind of I start. Then yeah, so because of the 40 minutes driving up and down, I always singing. Like I have to, rest in between, so to take a break and a singing, and then like go up. So then and then suddenly one of the guy he was asking, "Hey, you have a great voice. I want to introduce one person." So that's kind of how I met like several friends who was musician. That's kind of getting bigger and bigger.
Hmm.
And but then I kind of started to do the musical because that's kind of my strengths at the time. And I see so many people. Um, oh, thank you. I
Well, we
see
put
so.
up comments when we see good ones.
Oh, yay! Yeah, so oh my god, I lost the question. What was that?
I guess it's like you're telling me how you kind of like you. A lot of people go to LA. Like there's a story that like Neil Young, he's a Canadian, right? He came to LA, and that's how he got into like his
Oh
first
yeah, yeah.
band, Buffalo Springfield, because he met all those guys just this kind of roaming around LA trying to find a scene. And then he found, because there's so many musicians in LA, it's like New York. You go to certain parts of New York, there's you can get into the scene.
Mm,
And once you get in that scene, then somebody asks you to, sing on something, or they ask you to play here, or you get support for your vision, and you're able to do like your classical stuff that you were doing, the musical. I think it's just an artist environment. I think you have to be like, if you're in certain like places, like
yeah.
they don't have anywhere for you to play, right? If you're in certain places in America, there's no clubs, like there's no stage, there's not a lot of artists running around. where you could get into an artist scene and actually connect with people. And you have known scenes in like LA and Nashville and New
Mm.
Orleans and New York City. And once you get there, then people kind of just, well, I'm just going to get there and then I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah. I
it sounds
just
like you kind of did that. It's kind of like a hippie thing. People used to
yeah.
go to like Haight Ashbury, go to San Francisco, and then they would just find, the Grateful Dead type people. That, oh, I just found a band like the Dead, and I'll just go and make another Grateful Dead, or be in that scene, and they would just get into it, and it just happened.
Actually, so first my plan was just 6 months to be in United States.
Oh wow, only
Only
six.
6 months, yes.
And
And
what
I
did that
just
turn into? What did it turn into?
so then the second month, like I just want to try out for the musical auditions, and
Mhm.
then like I went there, and then I got fortunately I got the pass. So like my first musical show was after 6 months. That's why I decided to stay, and I wind
Mhm.
up I'm living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't go back except maybe to visit family and stuff, right? You just stayed here.
Yeah, or sometimes I went back and forth, but
Yeah.
yeah, I wind up and saying, yeah, I love
Well, that's
LA.
cool. Cool. I mean, I actually was in Tokyo for business from like 2004 to 2006.
Cool.
Living in Moto Azabu near Roppongi.
Awesome. Party
Uh,
city.
yeah, yeah, and it's like, well, it's expat land. We have a little bit of expats, but I don't know if they like this, but I was trying to be as cool as possible because I was going to I wasn't one of these guys that would only go to the Hard Rock Cafe because I'm an American. I would go
Hmm.
to every Japanese restaurant I could find because
Oh,
I
cool.
wanted to know. 'Cause my daughter was going to a Japanese preschool, and then she went to
Oh,
Nishimachi,
cool.
and so like my daughter and my wife were there, and I wanted to immerse her and not say we'll just get a burger all the time. It's like no, let's have sushi, let's have sashimi, let's try everything. And it was cool because my daughter was actually a cool kid that she actually did try like all the Japanese food, and she even to this day at 22 years old, she loves it.
Yay.
She's like she orders from like Fulton Fish Market in New York City to make her own stuff all the time.
Oh, cool. Oishi.
Yeah,
Arigato.
very much.
That's
Uh,
awesome. Wow, great.
but let me get back to the question. So when you record, do you actually do a home studio? Because a lot of people, because of the pandemic, have kind of built their own home studios and use digital audio workstations like Pro Tools and Logic and all those things. So, are you somebody that you do that initial demo, or you do all the production at home, or do you go to a traditional recording studio?
So this is my yay home studio.
Yeah, it
So
looks
I
like it.
and then yeah, so I use Logic Pro,
Okay,
and
cool.
my microphone is the Neumann TLM103, and then I use the UAD Apollo device.
Oh,
And
cool.
for
Apollo.
and then for arrangements, I love using cine samples,
Hmm.
and also the East West and orchestral tools and atmosphere contact and etc. like others.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, and, David also records the bass and the guitar. So usually he used the Grid Silver Jet or Jazz Masters or Rickenbacker. And then I
What what
love
type of what type of piano do you use?
I think it's Yamaha.
Yeah, it looked like a Yamaha.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's Yamaha.
Yeah, that's a really good like
It's
precision
beautiful. I
piano.
love
Yeah,
it.
they're beautiful. I'm stuck with, well, I'm not stuck, but I have Rolands and Moogs and like lots of analog gear. But like I would love to have like a physical piano, but I don't have the room for it in my bedroom studio. 'Cause I'm an actual bedroom producer.
Mm.
It's actually in my bedroom, but so I don't have the room for my piano in here. But one day I'm gonna get a bigger spot and I will get a Yamaha because there's a nice
Yeah, it's
that's a nice thing.
beautiful.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. But yeah, I just think it's so do you do the complete song
Oh,
in the
right,
studio, or
right.
do you do the demo?
Yes. So I do. So I do demos. I do everything. The recording, and arrangements and lyrics. Of course, David helped me, supported me,
Hmm.
and so we kind of do the rough mix as well. I do the rough mix and mastering as well,
That's
and
cool.
then yeah, so it was nice that after I could ability to do the mixing and mastering, the song, the more wide open for my career, which is
Well, I think
great.
it's good to be able to have the vision of what you want it to sound like, and then find a producer. Because I think this is where the thing that's hard is like if you're a musician and you're not too sure of yourself, then you can let a producer kind of take over your work.
Right. Yeah.
But if you're a kind of very directed singer songwriter,
Yep.
you have a clear vision of what
Yes.
you want it to
Yes.
sound like, and the producers that you want are the ones that enhance your style but don't totally deviate from your vision, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
maybe if there's something that they see that you okay, well, maybe I should change it, but most of the time it serves the song. It
Mm.
doesn't radically shift your vision, but enhance it or maybe make it you do a little bit different, but not totally like
Yeah.
360 away from what you want originally envisioned, right? Is that the type of people you like to work with, or do you
Yeah.
like to
So
challenge?
actually, yeah. Well, actually, I'm so honored that so the Brian Malouf, he's the legend mix engineer. He mixed my song,
Awesome,
and that's, oh my god, he's amazing. So he brought the song like way next, beyond the
next
next
level,
level. Yep. And
yeah.
it was really nice.
But you had
uh
the roadmap. He didn't really deviate from what your vision was. He just made it sound better, right?
yeah, well, also I kind of explain, I see this one is kind of this vision, blah blah blah, blah. Sometimes I'm
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
telling like super detail, but oh my god, like I just said at the vision, like he did it beyond the vision,
The
like
vision.
like
Well, that's the thing is like
incredible.
recording engineers in itself is an art. And a lot of times these days, because of the COVID, I spend a lot of time doing a lot of my own mixing and mastering. And when I have worked with engineers, it is an art, and what they're able to do and what they hear and the tricks they use. Not there's tricks, but there's techniques they can use with using the boards they use and the equipment they use to enhance everything you do. and
Yeah.
and it's like kind of like when you have a producer and they say, "Oh, why don't you do a shadow vocal? Why don't you do this thing and this like like alternate key on this one channel and then build it?" And then there's all this stuff that you can do. Like if you understand like music theory or what it's going to sound like, that you might not have intended, or you might not inherently know to do that. There might be
Mm.
things that, oh wow, if I run this thing in multiple layers with different tunings, I can get this like crazy sound that I didn't think of if I just did it straight.
Yeah.
Um, is this stuff that why you want to work with people to kind of bring ideas like that to you,
Hmm.
or
I really
like
like that he brought more dynamics for the song. I love it. Yeah.
that's always just the audio quality of somebody having the equipment that has the right preamps, that has the
Mhm.
right treatment. That's kind of like if you have like the famous like great boards that from the 70s, like like a Sound City, like a Neve. Like
Mhm.
Neve audio is like this classic audio. They would use it on like Fleetwood Mac Rumors
Mhm.
and like Tom Petty, like the M Torpedo. There was this analog board, and I think actually the Foo Fighters, I think Dave Grohl actually bought that board that was in Sound City. It was
Mm.
actually this analog board that was used to mix all these great records for the
Oh,
second.
nice.
And
Wow.
and what
Ooh.
was the thing about it? It had some kind of analog circuitry in it that when you actually record a record on it, it just made it sound so good compared to like everything today is digital. But if you find these old analog equipment and you actually run your album and master it through it, it sounds like unbelievable. It just has this
Yeah.
warmth to the
Yep.
to the add to the mics. It
Mm.
adds to the drums, the kicks, and the bass drums, and even the guitars. It's like everything gets changed. And I
Yep.
guess I'm a big believer in analog just because I think the warmth of it, and it's kind of like even though it's a machine, it seems to be more. like have a character than
Mm.
digital. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
digital
yeah,
can
yeah.
replicate it, but I'm a big believer in using kind of solid state analog technology to give you warmth to your sound.
Yeah, yeah.
That's just one thing. But so have you been playing live at all or online, or because of the way things with the pandemic, how you handled like live performance or doing shows and stuff like that?
So actually, I'm super excited to announce that actually I have 4 more songs to release. I'm going to release
Oh,
in
awesome.
every 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay, cool.
So I just released the Falling Down next last month. Sorry, last month. So the March 4th, it's gonna come in on the second single. So and then after release the 4 more songs, and I'm kind of thinking more focus on the live shows. Yeah.
So all these songs are just gonna be separate releases, or are they gonna end up on like an EP?
I'm kind of thinking after releasing 4 singles, and then gonna be the EP.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So they would probably end up all landing on the same EP.
Yes. I kind of yeah. For the one EP, that's kind of
Yeah,
thinking.
this seems like
Yes.
today the way the industry is, it's like it is at a point where it seems like you do have to release on a regular basis
Mm.
compared to like there was a point like in the 70s and 80s where bands would appear for like and then disappear for 2 or 3 years, right? They would come out with something and
Yeah.
then they disappear because there was no net. So I guess they could get away with it. And but like today is like you kind of need to be engaged
Yes.
on
Keep
a
it up. Keep
playlist.
it up.
You got to have
Yes.
something coming out. It's kind of like the way the Motown used to run. Motown
Hmm.
would take a song, and if it didn't work with the Supremes, they give it to the Temptations. It didn't work with them, they give it to the Four Tops, and they just keep on putting out variations of it, or put out different songs every week with each band. And if they didn't hit the number one or didn't hit the top 10, they'd do it again, do something else. They just keep on putting them out. And
Hmm.
I think it seems like that's the way things are today. It seems like
Yep.
people are in that same kind of mode.
Yeah. 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 I was
Because
thinking for releasing. Sorry. I was thinking for releasing the one album for this 5 songs. But wait a minute. I think it's I wanna cherish, one song each, not like throwing them,
well, they
just
can get their own promotion. The problem with albums
yeah.
too.
And I want to cherish like one song. It's
Well, the
that's why
thing
I
is
just
that
want.
because we're in a playlist world, what happens is like albums don't get listened to all the way. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times you have to put the songs out individually so they can get on the playlist and they can get in the rotation
Right.
because the today's audience is less likely to actually listen to an album all the way through
Yeah.
compared to like when I was a kid, kids would have an 8 track or a vinyl. And
Right.
both of those you would tend to listen to the whole thing. Now the 8 track you could bounce around, but you still stayed on the one cassette. You didn't pull it out. You would actually, I actually got like Stevie Wonder songs on the Key of Life on an 8 track, and I would actually let it run all the way through because it was so good. But
Yeah.
it's just I think the idea of vinyl is coming back. There's a lot of indie bands that have found that if you put out vinyl, your fans will actually listen to your complete
Yeah.
piece.
This is also
Compared to
yeah,
if you put
one
it out like,
package.
yeah, if you, and it kind of gives you the ability to connect to your audience in a very cool way because you can have the art in the liner notes, and it's a lot smaller distribution than sending something out on the Spotify. But I think it just artistically uh, uh, feels good to actually be able to connect physically to an artist.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I think it's always encouraged people, even if it's a little cassette or something. It's like if you can connect to your fan with something physical of your
and
music, it
and
works.
also like because you're a musician, that we really seriously think about the order of the song as well, right?
Yeah, it's very important.
Yeah, so it's very very important. So yeah, it's really cool. The vinyl, there's a one package story. It's
And
not
it
just
kind of
one song. Is
it
yeah.
locks you into the order, right? Because
Yes, it
the
has to be
total,
the order. Yeah.
you tend not to once you put that needle down, you're not going to pick it up most likely. Most likely,
Yeah.
like if you even the today's fans that are getting these high fidelity systems, they're like, once you put the needle on, you usually listen to the whole thing, which is that's the goal of any musician. Is like you want people to listen to your deeper tracks, not because to me
Yes.
the cool thing about an album, it's the songs that aren't the singles. The songs that aren't the singles kind of tell you a lot about an artist
Mm-hmm.
because it
Hmm.
kind of gets into the deep kind of real to me the real depth of the artist is in the
Yes. Oh,
and
cool. Yes, yes.
that's what I like to listen. I tend to listen to the songs that were never, singles, because those are the things
Yeah.
that I really dig is the depth that the artist where they would go. And
Mm-hmm.
the singles are cool and everybody loves them, but I kind
Mm-hmm.
of like learn more about the artist, who they are from the depth of the interior songs on the record.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mhm.
But it's cool. But it's cool you got a lot of material coming, so that's really awesome.
Yes,
We
yes.
and we do like to have people come back on the show. We've actually done album release episodes. So if somebody puts out an EP, then we tend to do like a full episode of to support that EP release. So
Oh,
we've done that
cool.
before. And we actually have people like if they keep on putting out stuff and they want to talk about each individual track, we will go and do
Mm, nice.
multiple episodes with bands if they're if they want to do it. So yeah, we're putting that out there. If you when you have other things, if you want to do it, let us know.
Oh,
Um,
cool. Thank you.
and so, are you also collaborating with any other musicians on projects, like, or are you primarily focused on your own work?
Uh, so I think it's really fun to collaborate with other artists. It's, the mixing the different genre to create the new genre. I love it. It's cool. And but also I really, so it's not only just musicians. I really love to collaborate with like artists like painter or writer
Hmm.
or photographers, because people easily to forget music, how music add to emotion to visuals. So nowadays social media, everywhere. So it's kind of easy to collaborate to the people. So like it doesn't have to be just a musician with musician. It's different types of collaborations. So it's
Yeah, I
like,
think that's a lot of
yeah,
the work that we
there's a
do.
potential. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because that's why I got into the podcast because like I could just sit in my studio and just write expansive sound experiments all day.
Mhm.
That's all I could do. But what I do is I take some of my time and I actually go and talk to other musicians, and I found that the experience of actually not just working on my own stuff, but working with allowing other people to know about other musicians, and then
Mm,
I learn about other musicians, and then it informs me and gets me interested, and I find new things to listen to, and every time you're a musician and you listen to somebody, you pick up
yeah,
on it. You pick up something,
yeah.
and it ends up in your head, and when you're playing, you might just it pull a line, and I found myself like pulling like lines from John Coltrane or pulling like Mingus lines because I'm big time into jazz. So a lot of times when I play my electronic music, I'll actually pull lines from the things I like. So I'll just like just not that I was thinking of doing it, it just kind of happens. It's in the back of my head
Mm,
and will just pop up. And I think that happens to a lot of musicians. Like your what you love and your reference points tend to kind of you might play it a different way. You might play in a different key, different
right.
speed, different interpretation, different chord progression. But you felt it, and so you put it into the music because you felt that would work. And
Yeah, yeah. It's felt. It's so important. Taking
yeah,
in and feeling, and then to
well, I think it's the
create
whole
own
thing.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, feeling is I think that's everything to being a musician.
Yes.
Like it's like to me,
Yes.
and this
Yes.
is where I kind of get into one conversation before we kind of end is like one of the things I noticed with some of the modern technology is I like kind of like that idea of happy accidents when you record, right? Sometimes you
Mm,
might do something and your vocal might not be perfect, right? But the delivery might be so honest, and it might, and if you go back and you try to re-record the vocal and you're like, like that second, third take is really what it should be, but there's a little imperfection in it. And then I'm willing to go with the imperfection to get the honesty of what that sounded like. And I
Yes.
think there's a tendency now to try to make things sound so clean that, like, if you listen to like the Stones, like, the way Keith Richards plays, it's not actually like perfectly. It's little bit off key. It's a little off time, but it's what
Mhm.
makes Stones sound so good. Is he's
Yep.
not totally in sync. He's a little off, and it's on purpose, and it's kind of the way he plays, but it's not totally dead and on time. And
Mhm.
it's kind of like that imperfection in his style. It's kind of like funk. Funk is a little like if you listen to Funkadelic or you listen to Sly and the Family Stone, it's the stuff that's a little, not exactly perfect, but it makes the song so good, you know,
Yeah.
that you don't want to just edit that out to try to get 100% correct BPM or pitch.
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
that sometimes is a mistake.
Yeah. So one thing I really want to say is the why I love about music is how it's kind of hard to explain, but I kind of believe in the stuff you can see, but it's there. And then it's the reason why I love about music is you can see, right? But
Yeah,
you feel it, and then like suddenly you feel, cry or joy. Like they bringing something for the
it triggers.
emotion.
Yeah, it triggers like
Yeah, that
it
I
triggers
really
visuals,
love.
scenes in your head. Like
Yes,
every time I
yeah.
listen to Karen Carpenter, like I almost want to cry because I keep on thinking about something from the '70s because it's like they were like a '70s icon band, right? But it
Mm,
just like they were kind of their time, and it's kind of very nostalgic. But like every time I hear her voice, I get brought to like some scene
yeah,
from like '74 or '73, and I
yeah.
just remember
There's
this old.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very melancholy because her voice, even when it was singing a happy song, is melancholy, and it
Mhm.
kind of just triggers like this kind of beautiful sadness that's just like so enticing. But it's like it's kind of
Yeah.
weird because she kind of embodied this romantic sadness in her voice,
Yeah.
and it's just
Yeah,
it's
through
hard to
voice,
describe.
not like visual. You feel it. That's
Yeah,
just
as
a
soon as you
beautiful
hear
thing.
Karen Carpenter, you're just like, wow, like there's
Yeah.
nobody that sounds like that, and it just triggers like, wow, it's like I wish I could help her, you know, because it feels like she's so sad, but it's so beautiful, and I don't know if she knows people love her. That's the feeling I get. Like, did she not know people loved her? Because that's the kind of feeling I get. It makes me kind of sad, but because it is like it's so beautiful, and it's like to
Yeah.
feel like they're not that they feel like there's something that's triggering them to do that sad thing. But I mean, that's
Hmm.
that's the essence of music. Like things can bring you joy, they can bring you sadness, and bring you a
Yeah.
vision. Like you said,
Yeah.
that's
I loved about it for the music. The most love about it. Yeah.
well. I think we're at our point. We like to,
Oh, that was quick.
yeah. It goes by quick. You never know. But yeah, we try to. People are like, oh, I don't know if I can go an hour, and then we just went over. So
Yeah.
it's really happy that we have you on here. We want people
Thank
to go
you.
and check out your music. The links will
Yes,
be
please.
available. This is on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. We will also be on Spotify um, video podcast within an hour.
Oh,
This will
cool.
also go to the audio iPod. I mean, I Apple Podcast and a bunch like there's a bunch of other audio podcasts that we're affiliated with through Anchor FM. So you'll be on Stitcher, Radio Public, a bunch of other ones. So like
Cool.
it's
Thank
going to
you.
get distributed in multiple places, and it will be permanent links that we will send you to Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube.
Thank you.
We have a new link that started to actually go out to Twitter. So there's a link that goes out to Twitter and then maybe sends you back to YouTube. But
Oh,
there's
cool.
that's what's out there right now. There's one that got triggered on our Twitter channel, and that should have done that too. So thank you for being on the program, and we're very happy to have you again whenever you want to. We will send the links to you as soon as they're available, and we'll put up a highlight on our Instagram as well and a story.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you
Thank
for
you
being
so
part of
much
the
for
program.
having me. was
Yeah.
fun. Thank you.
So I'll just leave the broadcasting, and then you don't have to drop off yet, but I'm going to just turn off the broadcast now. And thank you, everybody, for listening and watching.